Greetings, Canadian youth workers. It's the middle of summer. I'm sure that you are tired and sunburned probably, and maybe ready for the fall, or maybe not. Maybe ready for vacation. But we are back here in the CanadianYouthWorker.com blog team doing some interviews. My name is Jason, part of that team, and today we are interviewing a friend of mine, Mr. Geoff Stewart from Peace Portal Alliance in BC. Let's say hello to Geoff and listen to him tell us a little bit about who he is.
Hey guys, yeah, my name is Geoff Stewart. I am the junior high and high school pastor here at Peace Portal Alliance Church. Been in ministry serving in a paid position for 5 years now, and before that almost 10 years as a volunteer before I became a worker here in the ministry. I'm married. I've got a wife named LaVon, and she's an accountant, and she's more exciting than her job might imply. And we have 2 cats. Their names are Norman and Puff Daddy, and we live here in South Surrey, BC, and love serving the church and loving teenagers.
Awesome. I love the fact that you have a cat named Puff Daddy. I think that's brilliant.
And it's a girl. That's the best part.
Very cool. Well, buddy, you've probably seen some of these videos. Maybe you haven't. You know the drill. You've got some questions. So the first one, what do you love about Canada?
I mean, I feel like I live in the best part of Canada, but that's just me being biased. It's so warm and it's nice. I love the West Coast, but I think what I love about Canada is that we're just the nicest people. And I had a friend come up from Los Angeles, and I dared him to like bump into as many people as he could on purpose. And I said, they'll all apologize to you, even though you ran into them. And I just think Canadians are so generous. I think they're so I just think Canadians are great people, and I love working with them. I live in a very multicultural kind of area of the country with lots of new Canadians, and it's really fun for us to do ministry in that context and be in a country that's so welcoming of other people. And yeah, I love all of Canada, but I really love where I live. I feel really blessed to be here.
Awesome, and I think you hit the nail on the head talking about the Canadian character. That's really cool, and yeah, South Surrey is one of the hot spots for new Canadians to come and immigrate and live. It's a little bit more affordable than further out on the West Coast, but it's still pricey. I mean, it's BC, right?
Yeah, it is a little crazy, yeah.
Yeah, so the next question, it kind of bleeds into that because of what you love about Canada. You love where you are. So what do you love about your ministry context in particular, and what do you find kind of difficult being where you are?
Yeah, I mean, where I am, we're kind of on a peninsula, so where we are, there's about 80 or 100,000 people that live in this general vicinity that we're in. But I'm really lucky with the context. What I love about it is that all my students come from 4 high schools in the area, so I can really focus on the ministry there. We're really big on campus ministry and really big on being actively involved in the schools. So for us, like, the biggest challenge is that there's so many students, but the advantage for us is that we've got a pretty narrow place for us to aim what we do. So we're actively involved in our high schools. I'm lucky enough I've been able to speak at one of the schools 2 years in a row about bullying and speak to the whole school and give a talk that really was a Jesus talk without using scripture. And out of that, we've built relationships with these schools. So for us, I think one of the biggest challenges is just the amount of people that we have to try and reach. There's so many young people in our area. There's about 7,000 high school students, and between myself and the other youth workers, we've got contact with about 1,000 of them, like legitimate, like hanging out, connecting with. So we got a lot of work to do. It's a big area.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you talked about your students being in 4 high schools. That's really unique to probably your context and maybe some others in our rural Canadian setting, others in an urban setting. I know here in Calgary we have like 17 high schools that our kids are scattered around.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more difficult to have that intentional presence. I think that's phenomenal to be able to zero in specifically on a few schools and dig into relationship there. So that sounds awesome.
Yeah, and one of the things we think about is that there are kids that come from schools that are farther away, but if we realize that if we are a community church where we are, that we're going to focus on the schools that geographically are the closest, that if we're going to meet new students, they would be the easiest to bring here, that could get here by bus, get here by foot, and that for us, like, if we're going to spend our resources and our time doing that, we really want to focus on the places where we can actually throw our net in a reasonable fashion, and that we can see kids coming in here. And our group is 80% kids from the community. We don't have a lot of teenagers in our church, but on a Thursday night, you'll see kids that come from unchurched homes, and they're here because their friends invited them.
That's very cool. Very cool. Talk to me a little bit more about that invitation culture. Obviously, you've set the tone for your students, not only as a paid professional, but as a volunteer many years before that. What is it? What have your students caught about inviting their friends and connecting with them, creating spaces of belonging and connectivity or whatever? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we do the bulk of our programming on Thursday nights. We only do weekend events twice a year, and part of that is for our volunteers, and part of that is the fact that we don't want to do any sort of event that might seem like a bait and switch, like it's that we would try and get them to come to this one event and then, hey, come back on a Thursday night or another day of the week and it would be different. So what we do throughout the year is we provide these on-ramps, and they're called 7 nights. So our program runs junior and senior high on the same night, but they run at separate times and only overlap during worship. And so one of them starts at 6:30, one starts at 7:20, and every 7th week we have a 7 night, and they start at 7 o'clock and they cost $7. And those are our on-ramp nights, where we go and we do a special night every 7 weeks to break it up. One, so that youth group doesn't become like church, so that there's not that kind of, not monotony, but that it's maybe can become too consistent and predictable. And then every 7th week we break it up, do something really fun, but when we're there, we make sure that we pray and we make sure that we are engaging kids as much as possible and inviting them to come back on the next Thursday. And that most of our students actually don't invite their friends to our fun events, but they invite them to Thursday night because they know what they're going to get. They know that it's going to be safe, and the culture is that there's always a seat beside you, and that seat could be your friend sitting there. And it's not about inviting all your friends, it's inviting one of your friends. And it starts with one, and they'll invite one. And our students have really caught a vision of invitational, but also creating a culture where it's safe to be like you're in a family, and that welcoming people to a home, that it's safe to be them.
That's huge. Creating that sense of safety, that sense of trust. I mean, that's big in the world of teenagers. You know that, I know that. Anybody else who's watching this working with Canadian teenagers knows that. So I think that's brilliant. I love hearing about your Thursday night stuff and how you're being creative, doing stuff that fits your context. And that's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So next question here. You had mentioned this earlier when you were introing yourself. You've been a paid youth worker for the last 5 years, but you've done youth ministry for more than a decade, 15 plus years or so.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that transition from being in the professional world outside of professional church world, and then transitioning into the church world. And then I'd love to hear you chat a little bit about Download Youth Ministry, this network that you're involved with, and resource opportunity for youth workers as well.
Sure, yeah.
If you have a few minutes.
Absolutely, got tons of time. So for me, I became a Christian in the 11th grade. At the end of grade 11, I got baptized in grade 12, and then the end of grade 12, I decided I wanted to be a volunteer in the youth ministry. I didn't know much. I wasn't a very mature Christian at the time, but I had a real heart to serve. And there was a pastor named John Imbo, who lots of people know, and John Imbo invited me to be a junior high youth sponsor. So I was helping co-lead a grade 7 boys group, and I really enjoyed that process, and I loved hanging out with these kids. And for me, I was commuting almost 40 minutes to the church on Thursday nights. I lived a long way away, but this is the church I got saved at. And so I became a junior high leader, and I served as a junior high leader. My guys became high school students, and I went all the way through high school with them and graduated, and I went back and grabbed more high school guys and went through another time for another 3 or 4 years. And all through that, I'd finished my undergrad at Simon Fraser University. I have a bachelor's degree in geography, of all things, and I was working at a restaurant, and a gentleman that owned a company came and headhunted me and asked me to come work for his company. And I had an amazing job. I had a huge salary. I had a company car, and my life was going great. I bought a house. I was getting married, and all the while I always had this longing that I had a job that I didn't love, but I just happened to be good at. And so my wife and I were driving home from Calgary, and we stopped in Canmore to go to a Starbucks. And I went and got a drink for my wife, because I actually don't like coffee, but
Nice.
I got her a drink. I save a lot of money that way. So I got her a drink, and I slid down the sleeve on the cup and read a quote that, for me, I was in a place, and here's where the place was, that the youth pastor that I was serving under had been here 10 months and actually had an affair with one of our volunteers and got removed from his position. So I'd been the longest standing volunteer, and I remember the night they announced what was going on, and I said, you know what, I'll take over while you find somebody. I wasn't qualified. Hadn't been to Bible school. I hadn't been lots of things. But I said, I've been here a long time, and the Lord was somehow able to give me the margin in my life that I could spend an extra 15 to 20 hours a week just keeping the youth group going. So we did the grad and we did the summer programming, and then over that summer is when I was on my road trip through Canmore. And anyway, the cup simply said this. It said, failure can be difficult, but success can be worse. If you succeed at the wrong thing, the combination of money and opportunity will keep you locked in forever. And that was the position I was in. I had a job that paid me great. It had afforded me every opportunity I ever wanted. I had more money I knew what to do with, and it was great. I bought a house, but I was going to stay forever. I was going to stay forever stuck in this job that I was at that I didn't love. And some people in my life, an elder at the church, said, Geoff, I think you should apply for the job. And I was concerned about salary, and I was concerned about my mortgage and all these things. And over the course of a few months, the Lord really calmed my heart and said, you need to dive in and be faithful to what I'm calling you to. And I quit my job in September. I started here in that October, and I've come in here and being from a non-traditional kind of background, and for me, it's kind of informed a lot of my leadership. And I think if there's one thing that I take from how I ran the business I worked in, I worked for a company that did collision repairs. I was managing one of their centers and kind of working with a bunch of their other managers. So I realized that, in the church context, we get this all the time, and your elders or your pastors might be like, hey, Geoff, what are the numbers like? How are your numbers? How are you going to get your numbers better? And when people ask questions about numbers and how we respond to numbers, they're always reactive answers. They're reactive responses to a problem, that the numbers are the issue. And when I worked at my shop, every night they would send me a report with the numbers. And the numbers were how much repairs cost, what our profits were, how much rental cars were costing, all kinds of different numbers that we needed to work with. And guys would read those numbers and say, the numbers aren't good enough, and they would respond to the numbers with action. And for me, I realized at one point I'm going to stop responding to the numbers, and I'm going to start being proactive with them. And what I started doing was saying, instead of worrying about all these numbers, I'm just going to make sure that every person that walks in the door gets taken care of. And if I take care of them, I'm going to do their job right. I'm going to make sure when they pick their car up that it's fixed properly, and they're not going to get a warranty, and they're going to get it back on time and fixed properly, and they're going to be happy and tell their friends, and they're going to bring more business to us. So for us, we started focusing on people, and numbers became the yield, right? We get more people because we focus on the numbers, and we became the most profitable store per square foot. And in our ministry, we're not worried about, hey, our numbers were low tonight, what did we do wrong? We say, what can we do better that will eventually down the road inform the numbers? So every kid that comes in, we want to know their name, we want to know their story, we want to plug them in with a small group, and we want to make sure that we take care of them through the whole process. And that a kid who ends up on the periphery, I imagine this circle, and imagine all your kids in this circle, and there's kids on the outside that are periphery kids or maybe drifting away. I'm very focused on bringing people back into the core and bringing them in and creating a space where they're allowed to be them and they can express who they are. And a kid came up to me a couple weeks ago, and he's no church background, a young guy, his name was Curtis, and myself and a leader drove him home. And I said, hey, Curtis, tell me, man, are you from a Christian home? You ever hear about Jesus growing up? He said, no. And I said, what do you think about all this? You're new here. And he said, Geoff, for the first time in my life, I'm at a place where I'm allowed to be who I am. I'm allowed to be me. I feel safe enough to be me. And I said, man, you get it. And that for us, it was simply taking care of him, honoring him, loving him, that he's going to get to a place where I think he can encounter Jesus because we're living out the values of inclusiveness and care and loving for everyone, the marginalized and the cool kid.
Brilliant, man, and I love that story. I love your heartbeat. I love how you are seeing this value of people over projects, people over performance, and it's revolutionizing South Surrey in the youth culture there, whether that's in the short term and or in the long term.
Yeah, and what's cool is that the schools are starting to catch a vision of it. They see, I think the word for me that going into the fall and what we're doing and what we're teaching our leaders, this idea of faithfulness, is that our kids are going to run to lots of things. They're going to sometimes run to cooler youth groups. They're going to run to cooler friends, or they're going to run to their boyfriend, girlfriend, and whatever the world has to offer. And that for us, like, we're just going to stand and be faithful. And for the schools, we're going to stand and be faithful to them. And that when they need help, we're going to be there. When they need assistance, they need someone to show up. When they need someone to talk to a kid, we're going to be there. And that for these kids, in the midst of their successes, in the midst of their failures, we will remain faithful to them. And the world can offer a lot, but the world can rarely offer faithfulness in the way that is Christ-like. And that for us, like, we know that our edge over the world and everything it has to offer is faithfulness.
Cool. Very cool. Talk to me a little bit about Download Youth Ministry. I know you're part of the blogging team. What is this resource? I think it's pretty killer and pretty amazing, but some people might not know about it. What is it? how can people get plugged in with it?
Yeah, I mean, when I started as youth pastor, when I was looking for materials, I'd go to all kinds of different publishers, and I would order a product, and they would send me a box, and it would have a DVD in it, have all kinds of stuff. And what I love about Download Youth Ministry is, one, the products are way cheaper. It's like $3 a week for curriculum. So instead of having to order, you want a 6-week series, or you're in a pinch, and I think when I hear pastors say, write your own stuff or you're a bad pastor, I realize that we're busy sometimes. And for me, I want to spend time with students, and if I can find a resource that I can get and that I can go and take and contextualize it to my group, to me that's not selling out. I think that's leveraging an opportunity for me to use my time even better. That I love writing my own stuff, but sometimes I don't have time. And the beauty of Download Youth Ministry, one, is price, but two is that you can go and you can find something that works for you, and it could be something as simple as like a calendar you can give your students. It might be training materials for your volunteers, like, I realize how many hats a youth pastor wears, and rarely, especially in most church contexts, are you strictly a youth pastor. You might be overseeing lots of other areas, and for you to be able to multiply yourself in a way that doesn't hurt your church budget, or if you're someone who's a youth worker that isn't paid, might be serving as a volunteer, you're bivocational, have another job. I mean, there's no shame in acquiring and buying resources and using them. And I want to take advantage of other people's hard work and their R&D that they've put blood, sweat, and tears into, and I can pay a small amount of money as opposed to $30, $40 for a series. For me, it's absolutely the best. There's great stuff on there, and you can take it and make it better. I'm not a guy that loves a blank slate. I love making things better. My gift set would be a maximizer, so I want to take something that someone gives me and say, how can I make this better for my students? How can I adapt it for the way that I do? So if they don't have a preach, how can we take this small group curriculum and turn it into a preach? How can we change these small group questions for a longer small group time? And that, for me, having that starting point that I can go from, it allows me to multiply my effectiveness with my students and with my leaders. And that, for me, it's been the best. The blog, other than me, there's some great, I'm not a great author, but there's lots of great authors on there, and you've got amazing perspectives of people from different contexts. There's a guy named Chris Wesley, who's a very great voice in youth ministry in the Catholic Church, who's on there, and you got Neely McQueen, who's a great voice in girls ministry, Doug Fields, Josh Griffin, Matt McGill, who writes incredible discipleship content. There's lots of just great guys from all over the place, including a lady who just moved over from Amsterdam. She's now a youth pastor on the East Coast of the U.S., and it's just great to have different perspectives, and I find that's what I love about Canadian Youth Worker, is that there's so many different perspectives that are brought together, and I think that if we only stick to our denom or only stick to voices we like, we miss the opportunity to learn.
Love it. Love it. I love what you said about that, just in case you didn't know it. I love it. But I love what you said about the different perspectives, the diversity, gathering together. I mean, we're all on the same team. Yeah. And understanding how we're wired, what our gift set is, what our predominant qualities are, our strengths, and knowing that it's okay to invite others who have different strengths, whether that's digitally or in a person-to-person network, to surround us so that we can all do this loving people thing a lot better and a lot more effective. I think that's brilliant. So thanks for what you're doing there. People can obviously search Download Youth Ministry on Google, or just go to the site, which is what?
It's downloadyouthministry.com, and then the blog is lovegodlovestudents.com, which links you back to Download Youth Ministry. And it's great. I read all kinds of youth pastor blogs, and if you've got one, send it to me. I'll probably want to read it. I love hearing people's perspectives from every corner of the youth ministry realm. Every one of us is just dealing with it. Sometimes the same things is often so different, and I feel like I can learn from everybody. I love it.
Very cool. It's that time of the interview where we're going to start to wrap things up. I want to give you a second just to say, like, if people wanted to get in touch with you, what would they do? That's me on Twitter. What would they do? What would they do if they were looking for Geoff Stewart from Peace Portal Alliance?
I'm writing it down right now.
Slower so I can. But as you're writing, also be prepared for the Great Canadian Youth Worker Quiz. There you are, at Geoff C. Stewart.
And that's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the same. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I luckily jumped on all those things early, as fast as I could, so I could get my username. With the exception of Snapchat. I'm not on Snapchat and will never be on Snapchat.
Agreed, me neither. That's just really weird and inappropriate.
Keep that on the open,
So Great Canadian Youth Worker quiz. That's how we're going to finish our time together. I
I
got
love
five
trivia.
rapid questions that I'm going to just fire at you. Some of them are weird, some of them are fun, hopefully. Hopefully they won't stump you too much, but there's the possibility that you might not answer them, and that's okay. We're just going to have fun with it. This is your time to shine.
Okay.
Here we go. First question. What is your favorite Canadian animal found on Canadian currency?
Oh, it has to be the beaver on the nickel.
Nice. That was a good one. I prefer the caribou on the quarter.
Caribous are played out. Beavers are amazing. That thing can chow through a tree with only its teeth. It is a majestic beast.
I love it. Okay, cool. Can you name a famous Canadian astronaut?
Oh, I can. Is Roberta Bondar our Canadian female uh,
That's
astronaut?
good, man. That's a slow clap because you got it.
Yes, thank
Knocking
you.
it out. All right, question number 3. How many teens are there in your city?
How many teams?
Teens, like teenagers.
Oh, 6,000.
6,000. Awesome. Awesome. And how many churches in your network?
In my that's a hard question to answer. In my local network, there's 7. In my denominational network, there's 88.
Very cool. Okay, question number 4. Who is your favorite Canadian and why?
Oh, my favorite Canadian and why? I'd have to say his name was Mr. Dressup.
Nice. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Now, why is he your favorite Canadian?
because I mean, Mr. Dressup was amazing. Mr. Dressup had the tickle trunk, and which is always a fun reference that teenagers don't get anymore. I love watching that show. I always watch that, Under the Umbrella Tree, and Size Small. And remember the Size Small and the record that danced with the wooden spoons? Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
No.
You guys are lame.
That's very cool. Okay, Mr. Dressup. Haven't heard that one yet. Okay, last one. Question number 5. Name one thing all Canadian youth workers need to know.
One thing all Canadian youth workers need to know. Faithfulness will always trump coolness.
Killer. Love it. Geoff, flying colors, 100%. I do cheers, but I didn't do the Google Plus Hangout app thing, so you'll have to slow clap it right here with me. So, well done. Well done. Geoff, thanks so much. Appreciate your story. Yeah, anything else, parting words for us?
Yeah, guys, keep going. It's a good fight. It's worth it. Teenagers are amazing. They'll change the world. And just keep telling about Jesus.
Awesome. Thanks, Geoff. Thanks for your passion. Thanks for your story. If you loved hearing this story about Geoff, you can get a hold of him on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Also interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. What you liked about this, what you don't like, who you would like us to interview next. We're looking for more Canadians, local, urban, rural, you name it. We're interested in hearing your story and celebrating what God is doing in you and through you in your context. God bless. Have a great rest of your summer. Praying for you.